So today I thought I would go over um, something that I find very helpful to utilize in my own life. And, you know, everything we talk about in these car videos usually ties together. This ties together to a lot of the stuff that we've been discussing recently. Um, and one of the ways it ties together is the KISS approach, the keep it simple, stupid approach, that I'm a big advocate for when it comes to these manifesting ideas and just stress reduction ideas in general. If you're unfamiliar with my general approach, um, I think that if we reduce our stress level, first of all, we feel better internally, which for me is the most important thing. But also, if we reduce our stress level and consistently feel less stressed and more relaxed, our lives tend to get better. You could say we manifest better things in our lives. And from there, you can play with these more esoteric or far out sounding manifesting ideas to change your external reality. But the fundamental underpinning for so much of this stuff is feeling more at ease and more relaxed as we go about our day, and making that more of our default. And that's what I like to help people with. In these videos, when I coach people or counsel people one on one, when I write books, generally the theme is just about, how can we feel more relaxed and how can we go through our day, having a like a relaxed, flowy state become more of our default. Because what we find, at least for the vast majority of us, is it's far easier said than done. If it was easy, everybody would do it because people like to feel relaxed. People like to feel good, right? And then we don't. And so it's like figuring out like why don't I feel good more often and how can I actually correct this? Now in a recent video, I was talking about ways, and I'll link above to the recent video and put it in the description. I was talking about, just different simple ways when you feel bad, when you feel stressed, to to utilize these stress reduction ideas, to utilize these manifesting ideas. Um, for instance, like, using physical movement, like jumping up and down or talking out loud to yourself. Or like, let's say like you're in the car like I am right now and you're blasting some of your favorite music. Or, just affirming something. You can say like robotic affirmations over and over again, or sitting very still and not judging your thoughts as they pass by, or just like relaxing into an easy chair and feeling the ease of that. All those things are ways we can directly affect how we're thinking and feeling. And something that's very helpful in relation to all of this stuff is using, like what W. Clement Stone calls a success indicator, but you don't have to call it that. Using something to kind of monitor your behavior, at least on like a daily basis. And, a very good way to do that is simply to like have a journal or, an entry, it can be on your phone, where like you monitor like how did I feel today? And you can do more often than how did I feel today. You can do how do I feel every hour. You can check in with yourself. But I would say in the very least, it can be helpful to check in like once a day, like at the end of the day. Like how did I feel today in general? Um, and you can just make a very simple scale as to how you felt and just be honest with yourself. No one's going to see this scale except for yourself, So like the most simple scale that I can think of is like a 1 to 5 scale, where like it's like 1 is like you felt very stressed out. 2 is like, you kind of were like having a down day. Like you felt like adequate enough to get through your day without major struggle, but like you didn't feel that you didn't feel good at all. 3 is like you felt okay, you felt pretty neutral. 4 is like you felt very good. You're like, in flow a lot and just feeling good, like, and just things just are going well in your life throughout the day. And 5 is like you felt like really good, like a deep, utter sense of fulfillment or contentment, peace in your life, whatever you want to say. That's an example of a 1 to 5 scale. Now, this could be a 1 to 10 scale. You could use colors instead. You could have red being really stressed out and, blue is deeply peaceful, whatever. The point is to have a simple scale for yourself that you can then look at your behavior for, like, let's say the day, and right where you were at in general. And again, it's not about judging yourself harshly. It's just about becoming more aware of how you felt. Because so much of this stuff, especially when it comes to like manifesting and having things turn out better in your life, comes down to feeling better more often, feeling more relaxed more often, maintaining that more quote unquote high vibe state, or feeling like you're more in the quote unquote wish fulfilled. When you're in like a high vibe state, or like, you feel like you're in the wish fulfilled, or you feel like what you want is happening and going to happen and everything feels good and flowy, that's like probably like a 4 or 5 on this 1 to 5 scale. And again, you make your own scale. People can judge it differently. The numbers don't mean the same thing for everybody, but you get the point I'm trying to make here. And being on like a 4 or 5, first of all, feels really good, right? You feel good. If you're at like a 4 or 5, you feel really good. And things just seem to happen more easily. Like when something bad happens externally, like it rolls off your shoulders more easily, and things like just connect more easily. It's like, more traffic lights are green, for instance, and like, it just seems like things are easier in your life. Now, we'll all want to be up there all the time, but often we find we're really at like a 3 or a 2 or maybe even a 1 a lot of the time. It's like our default for the day. And so, you can ask yourself at the end of the day or at the beginning of the day, about if you assess how you felt yesterday or whatever, like as you assess your last 24 hours, like, where was I at? Was I at a 1? Was I at a 2? Was I at a 3? Was I at a 4? Was it a 5? And subjectively, we want to be at like a 4 or 5, right? But that's just subjectively. Objectively, you could say like big picture, in God's eyes, right? It doesn't matter where you're at. It's just about being aware, right? So like 1 is not worse than being at 5 in God's eyes. God does not behold iniquity, right? If you judge your behavior in that honest way, it makes it easier to change it, to go from that 2 to that 4 more often. So that's the point of like a success indicator. We've made many longer videos about W. Clement Stone's ideas. I'll link to the playlist above in the description below. But a very basic success indicator that only takes a couple minutes a day to do is you just think about where was I at on my scale, whatever my scale is, 1 to 5, 1 to 10, red, blue, green, purple, whatever it is. Like where was I at today? And, Maggie made a video the other day. I'll link above to it. I think it's that video. If otherwise, she's talking about the same theme, if it's not that exact video. Maggie recently did she called it like a high vibe experiment, where like she tried to stay at high a vibe as possible for 30 days. And a lot of great things happened externally in her life during that time. And she made a great point, which I think most of us have recognized before if we're into these law of attraction ideas. We're like, you are thinking and feeling and acting different if you're at like a high vibe state. And like if you're at like a 4 or a 5 on the scale, than if you're at like a 1 or a 2. You're thinking in a much more inspired way. You're like naturally taking much more inspired action than if like you're at a 1 or a 2. So one reason from a manifesting standpoint that it's so important to gently become aware and then get yourself more consistently into this like 4 or 5 state as your default is because it helps you manifest things much more easily. That's not to say you can't manifest good things, great things from a 1 or 2 state. You can, but it's a lot more painful, and usually the process takes a lot longer than when we're at like a 4 or a 5. Now, I know for me personally, and I'm pretty critical with like my numbers when I do this, and I do this every day still. I actually use a 1 to 10 scale, but 1 to 5 is the same thing. So like for me, I've noticed, having done this for a long time, using the success indicator daily scale for a long time, that like I rarely have 5 days as my default, and I rarely have 1 days as my default. It's much more likely I'm going to be in that 2, 3, or 4 range. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, I'm pretty critical. Like my 3 might be some people's 4 or 5. But the point is, I recognize that if I'm honest with my behavior, not judging it harshly, beholding it with the eyes of God that can't behold iniquity, I realize I'm more in this middle state as my default a lot of the time. And it's like, how can I make it so if I'm feeling like I'm at a 2, if I'm having a 2-day or a 3-day, and I have many more 3 days than 2 days. But like if I'm at a 3 and I want to get up to a 4 or 5, what can I do to do that? And again, that's why I made that video the other day about like the stuff that I personally do, talking out loud, using physical, playful activity with my body, sitting still. Those are the kind of things that help boost me up from like a 3 to a 4. And there is a difference from a creative process and from a living process. I feel better and I create what I want in my life more easily. I'm in more of a flow when I'm at a 4 as my default for the day as opposed to a 3. And, the success indicators in a way to observe this, and it, like I said, only takes, if you're doing a simple thing like this, it only takes a minute or 2 to jot this in your journal. You write the date, then you think about it, like, where was I at today? 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. And then you write it down, and you can consider it, write notes down with it, but that's all you have to do. The real work with it is then during the day being like, all right, how can I get my state up, practically speaking? How can I get my state up if I feel down? It's not like if I'm at a 3 and feel okay and feel fine, then I'm like, oh, I got to get up to a 5. It's not like that. It's more just like if I notice I feel very stressed and like, let's say I started the day feeling like at a 4 and like, if I notice that, right? I don't have to notice this, but like if I noticed like I was feeling good and then like felt like I'm more in like 2 territory or maybe even 1 territory after like some tough stuff that happens during the day, how can I get back up to a 3 or 4? Relatively quickly. And that's by doing, for me personally, that's by doing some of the exercises I mentioned in that recent video. You got to figure out how to get up for yourself, what technique works for you. But there's a lot of techniques that are effective that work for a lot of people, such as talking out loud, such as robotic affirmations, stuff like that. There's a huge difference between being at like a 1 and being at a 3. Remember that. In a way, that's just as important as going from like a 3 to a 5, is being able to go from a 1 to a 3. I can tell you right now, if you feel really shitty and you start jumping up and down and screaming and just being really like, wild, like I talk about in The Joy of Not Thinking and Stop Being Serious, it's really quite easy to go from like a 1 to like a 2 or a 3 quickly. That's just an example. But yeah, the idea of maintaining a high vibe state is it's important, and it's, if we become more aware of how we're feeling on a daily basis as kind of our default, it becomes easier to do. And you figure out what works for you, so you don't feel as powerless about like I know I used to be like, oh, I'm at a 2, what should I do? Why is this happening? Like, why am I at a 2? Now I'm just like, oh, I'm at a 2. How can I feel a little bit better? How can I get to a 3 or 4 by the end of the day? Right? I don't feel powerless doing that anymore. I feel like I can make that happen. I'm not at the mercy of my emotions and my thoughts. I can direct my attention and focus so I can get up that scale from like the lower level to the higher levels, So yeah, this is simple but nuanced. It's the kind of thing that is great to have help with. So if you need help, let me know, radicalcounselor.com. If you have questions, let me know, radicalcounselor.com. Until next time, enjoy.